Hey Bulldogs, Jeremy Fewell here, Superintendent at Clinton Central School Corporation. Hey, I put together this presentation for you guys just to review our 2023 finances and to talk about our 2024 finances going forward. So here we have our 2024 financial report for Clinton Central School Corporation. So just to give everyone a brief overview about some of the items that are going to be discussed in this presentation. First of all, we'll do a abbreviated version of a budget 101 on public school financing to really just discuss all the different details and how complex public school financing can be. Here is a link that I've included in this presentation. This is from about a 22-minute video on Budget 101 public school financing that I recorded back in the spring of 2023 that goes into a lot more detail about public school financing than what I'm going to go through today. So if you want more details, I would reference back to this presentation. That's a YouTube video link of a similar presentation, just in more detail. We're also going to be talking about the 2023 budget for last year, as well as going through all of our expenditures with you guys as well. We're going to be talking about the education fund, operations fund, debt service fund, the 2019 GO bond fund, and the operating referendum fund. And we're going to talk about specific expenditures from a categorical basis from the operating fund. We're going to go into detail for the 2024 proposed and now accepted budget, talking about the education fund, operations fund, debt service fund, 2023 GO bond fund, the 2019 GO bond fund, and our newly reapproved operating referendum fund. And when we went to the community, we asked you guys to vote that into place back in the spring of 2023. And again, the community did come out and loudly supported the operating referendum renewal with a passing rate of 84%, which is just phenomenal from our community standpoint. When we talked about renewing the operating referendum, I told the community, everyone that I talked to, that we were going to be very, very transparent with the use of those dollars and all dollars utilized within Clinton Central School Corporation. So I'm going to go into detail about the budget that we have created on how the operating referendum funds are going to be used going forward. So we'll have some more details going forward with public school financing. Okay, so let's talk tax rates here. 2021, the tax rate for Clinton Central School Corporation was $1.12. 2022 was $1.15. 2023, $1.08. And again, we've been able to maintain that $1.08 tax rate just as we've presented to the community with doing the building project, with the GO bond, with the renewal of the operating referendum. We've been able to put all that into place and still be able to maintain that $1.08 tax rate. That tax rate does include that 15 cents for the renewal of the operating referendum. So as you can see, $1.08 tax rate just as we proposed, and we're going to continue to look to maintain that tax rate going forward in future years. When we get into details and talking about public school finance, and we're going into the Budget 101 presentation here. Funds for Clinton Central School Corporation. So we have buckets of money that we can pull from, and certain buckets of money can only be used for certain things. And we're going to go into a little bit of detail in this presentation about this, but I would reference you back to that other presentation that I made back in the spring of 2023 for even greater details on that. But the buckets of money that we have available to us are the education fund, operations fund, debt service fund, referendum fund, and the rainy day fund. So how are public schools funded in Indiana? Really three buckets of money that we are able to stream revenue from to help pay for the lights, pay for water, pay for utilities, pay for salaries, asphalt, HVAC, everything. We get three buckets of money to be able to pull from. We get local school support, which is the local tax rate. That's at $1.08. We get state school support, which is really based upon our enrollment. And we also get federal school support, which is more grant dollars, special ed dollars that we are able to get. So when we're talking about local school support, we're looking at three streams of revenue to fill that local school support bucket of money. We have property taxes, license, excise, and CVET taxes, and then we have FIT tax. So those are three streams of revenue that we have locally to support that local school support bucket of money. Okay, now when looking at the local school support bucket of revenue that we get, that bucket of revenue goes towards expenditures for operations fund, debt service fund, and the referendum fund. Now looking specifically at the operations fund, really what you want to think about the operations fund, the purpose of it is to pay for school corporations' non-classroom expenditures. So such as non-educational staff, looking at superintendent, maintenance, grounds, transportation, custodians, utilities, facilities, maintenance needs. It's a combination of former funds that are no longer referenced anymore from the transportation fund, bus replacement fund, capital project fund. Those funds no longer exist and they're all lumped in together with the operations fund. So the operations fund, just think about lights, utilities, facility needs. That's what that bucket of money is going to pay for. Okay, now when looking at the debt service fund and what it supports, you think about from a personal financing standpoint, your mortgage payment. So the debt service fund is paying the mortgage payment, the interest and principal for the bonds that we take out, whether it's a GO bond or a building project bond. That debt service fund is paying the principal and interest on those bonds for us. Schools will always have bonds out. That's how we have to maintain our tax rate, because there's always facility maintenance and upkeep that we have to continually look to do every few years with it. So the debt service fund is paying for those interest and principal payments for any bonds that we have out. Okay, so not all school corporations have a referendum fund, whether it be construction referendum is one form of a referendum. You have school safety referendum is another one. And then for us, we have an operating referendum. Operating referendum is going towards typically helping pay for staffing a lot of times. And that's what we have. We have an operating referendum here at Clinton Central, was again renewed by the community back in the spring of 2023. And that's going to go forward for 8 years from 2024 to 2032. And that's 15 cents on every $100 of assessed valuation. What we have not done a good job of as a district leading up until the fiscal year of 2024 is we've not done a good job of having a prescribed budget for the referendum fund. We do have that now going forward from 2024 on. We're going to have a specific budget, and later in this presentation, I'm going to go over exactly what the referendum fund is going to be paying for, how we have appropriated the revenue that we're getting from the referendum fund for staffing and other needs that we have. And so I'll review that specifically. In the past, approximately 80% of the referendum fund over the last 7 years has been used primarily for employee salaries and benefits, but it hasn't been necessarily allocated or budgeted out on a line item basis like we do have going forward. So we'll go into that a little bit more detail later on in the presentation. Okay, so let's go ahead and transition on to state school support. State school support is what feeds our education fund. The education fund is our biggest fund that we have as a district. That's where the bulk of our money for our entire budget for the year comes from. That's what is going to pay for a lot of teacher salaries. So the education fund is funded through the basic grant, honors grant, special education grant, and CTE grant. Those are typically tied very highly to our student enrollment. So that's why it's important that we are focusing on increasing our enrollment, or at least maintaining our enrollment. We do not want to see our enrollment decline, because that does negatively impact the education fund if the enrollment declines. Over the last several years, we have been able to increase our enrollment with good marketing, good program offerings here, and we're going to continue to look to do so. Okay, so what does the education fund support? Really, this is the fund that is directly used to pay for teachers, instructional assistants, clerical and building level administrators, salaries and benefits. We are permitted, schools are by code, Indiana code, permitted to transfer a maximum of 15% of the dollars from the education fund to the operations fund. We typically do that. That helps us keep local tax rate down by doing that. Because the operation fund is funded primarily through local tax rate. The only way we can get additional supplemental funds is by transferring a maximum of 15% of the education fund dollars into the operations fund. But the education fund is the biggest bucket of money. That is what is used to pay for teacher salaries. Okay, so state school support, additional grants that we can get. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, other than really to talk a little bit about the 21st Century grant. So if you know about the Bulldog Club at the elementary, that is a big grant for us, almost $250,000 per year. And that provides a lot of additional resources, additional revenue for our staff, additional programming for our students before and after school. So that's a great grant. Any grants that we can get our hands on, we are constantly trying to do, because that helps alleviate some stress within the operations fund and primarily the education fund. So we are continuously looking for big grants, great opportunities to be able to supplement our revenue. Okay, so when looking at the federal school support bucket, some different streams of revenue that fill that bucket for us would be the school lunch program, title grants, special education funding from the feds, migrant funding, and homelessness grants. So those are different streams of revenue that will feed that federal school support bucket for us. Okay, so the rainy day fund is really your savings fund or emergency fund for the school district. We like to be able to have about 100 days, approximately 3 months of expenditures set aside into the rainy day fund. In case anything happens, that's just kind of a good rule of thumb for us to have. We have a surprise roof leak or something like that, we can pull from the rainy day fund to be able to cover those expenses. So what does the rainy day fund support? Already kind of talked about that a little bit. It's really for any unplanned or non-budgeted expenses, such as replacing a roof that unexpectedly failed, any sort of HVAC work that comes up. Those things are going to happen in a facility as big as this, those surprises, things that you really weren't planned for. And so the rainy day fund can help support those items when they do come up. Okay, so let's do a quick recap of the Clinton Central School Corporation funds. Okay, again, first we have the education fund. Education fund is the biggest fund, has the most revenue in it, most expenditures in it. That's primarily used, that's paid through state dollars. That is primarily used for teacher salaries. That's kind of how to think about the education fund. Operations fund is funded from local taxes. That's really used to pay for non-classroom expenditures. Debt service fund is also funded by local taxes. Think about that as paying our mortgage and interest payments. So the principal and interest for any bonds that we have out. Referendum fund, again, funded by local taxes, was renewed in 2023. And that's for 15 cents on $100 of assessed valuation. And we're going to go through a specific budget for 2024 and beyond on how those funds are going to be spent. Rainy day fund is your emergency fund or savings plan for the district. So what impacts local school finances? Lots of items impact local school finances. Any sort of annexation, if you're within a TIF district, which is that tax increment finance. Other increases of levy or debt, ADM changes, so enrollment. If enrollment drops down, that's going to negatively impact your budget. If enrollment increases, that's going to positively impact your budget for the education fund. State funding. The state is constantly changing in the funding formulas for schools, so that impacts our education fund directly. Changes the complexity index calculation, that impacts our education fund. Last one, there's a big one. Changes in law or legislation. That happens every 2 years during the legislative sessions. They are constantly changing legislation that can either positively or negatively impact public school financing. So those are all big ones on what impacts our local school finances. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the 2023 budget and expenditures. So this was our planned budget for last year from January 1 of 2023 to December 31st of 2023. This was our planned budget. And then it also shows our actual expenditures where we ended on December 31st of 2023. So this was a plan, and then it shows the completed expenditures for each fund that we have. So first thing we'll talk about, we'll just kind of go down the line here. First of all is looking at debt service. We talked about all the different funds we have. So debt service, we budgeted the appropriation category here. That's our budget. That's our planned expenditures for the year. We budgeted 1.5 million, a little bit more than 1.5 million. The percentage column shows what we actually spent, the percentage of money that we actually spent from that 1.5. So out of that, we spent 54.8, where we have a remaining cash balance of $1.2 million for the debt service fund. The reason we only spent about 55% of what we planned for is due to our current building project and how the repayment structure is set up on our principal and interest payments for our bond repayment structures. There was a payment that, due to the restructuring of this, that we didn't have to make, that got pushed off into the summer of 2024. So thus, that's why we have a surplus there in that fund currently for the year of 2023. Education fund, we budgeted for 5.7 million. We spent 99.5% of that. We're left with a cash balance of 1.7 million. Operations fund, we budgeted for 3.6 million. We spent a little over 98% of that. And we have a cash balance remaining of 1.4 million in the operations fund. Rainy day, we had planned to spend 225,000 out of the rainy day fund. We spent 85% of that. We're left with a cash balance of 1.1 million in the rainy day fund. Referendum fund, we budgeted for 675,000. We spent 99.5% of that. We have a remaining balance of a little over 186,000. And the additional funds that are not necessarily planned for on a year-by-year basis are due to the GO bonds. These are short-term bonds that can be taken out based upon our assessed valuation. So if our AV jumps up, in order to keep our tax rate the same, we'll take out a small GO bond to be able to maintain that tax rate. So there was a 2019 GO bond that was taken out prior to me coming on as superintendent. There's still a balance of 13,000. That GO bond was taken out for technology upgrades, so we have a little bit more. And I think we've allocated these funds, so those funds will be dispersed sometime in January, February of this year. The GO bond for 2023 that we just took out at the end of 2023, there's a balance of almost 2.4 million. We're still planning on how those funds are going to be spent, but it's going to be utilized for additional facility upgrades and maintenance across the campus where needed. So we're doing some feasibility studies to see what needs to where those funds need to be allocated first, based upon the needs of our mechanics and everything around the campus. When looking at the cash balance up here at the top, so we currently have a cash balance of almost 8.9 million. Now I deducted almost 2.4 million. What that 2.399, that is the combined total from the 13,000 and the almost 2.4 million from the GO bonds, because those aren't part of our planned annual budget. Those are additional funds that are used for specific projects, and it's not a reoccurring bill that we have, or expenditure. So when we look at our overall cash balance, when you subtract out the GO bonds, we're sitting with around $6.5 million cash balance. When we go back to January of 2023 and we're looking at the fiscal year of 2022, we started January of 2023 with a cash balance of almost $2 million. So we've increased our cash balance by almost $2.3 million over the course of the fiscal year of 2023, which is really, really good for the district. It means we're in a really good spot financially. We're adding revenue, and it's going to allow us opportunities to really improve the district, continue to look to bring in programming for our students, maintain and improve the facilities going forward. So very excited to see that number where it's at a cash balance of 6.5 compared to where it was a year ago at 4.2, and we have plans going forward on how we're going to best allocate those additional funds as we move into 2024 and beyond. Okay, so looking at the 2023 operating referendum expenditures. So we didn't really have, like I talked about before, we didn't really have a set plan for exactly how the referendum's been spent over the last 7 years. It was primarily used for staffing, but when we looked at 2023, you can see a lot of it was used for staffing. So you look at staff salaries, PERF, TURF, and Social Security. So PERF and TURF, those are the pension funds for classified and certified staff, and then Social Security funding as well. We spent $548,000 of the referendum dollars went to those areas for salaries. Supplies for the corporation, we spent a little over $8,000 in supplies, and facility maintenance, things such as painting and just maintenance of the facilities. We spent around $115,000 in that category. The total expenditures for 2023 out of the operating referendum was $671,694.24. You'll notice that for 2023 expenditures, they're really lumped into 3 categories. I wanted to get more specific and more detailed on how those funds are going to be spent going forward. So you'll see when I show our proposed 2024 budget, how much more specific and in detail we have gotten. Okay, so now we're looking at the 2024 overall budget. Again, there's that cash balance carryover from 2023. We started 2024 with a cash balance of truly $8.9 million. Now, when I deduct out that GO bond, I want to say our actual cash balance in terms of what the plan for budgeting purposes is that almost $5 million. Okay, now looking at our funds, so debt service fund. When you look at what our planned budget was for 2023, again, we've talked about this number already. We planned for $1.5 million. For 2024, we're planning for almost $2.4 million. Education fund, we budgeted for 5.7. In 2023, in 2024, we are budgeting for a little over $6 million. For 2023 in the operations fund, we budgeted for $3.6 million. For 2024, we are budgeting for a little over $4 million. The rainy day fund, we budgeted $225,000 to spend in 2023. In 2024, we budgeted to spend $200,000 out of the rainy day fund. Looking at the referendum, every year we budget for $675,000. We may spend a little bit more, we may spend a little bit less, but that's what our budget line item is there. When you look at our overall budget for the district, in 2023, our budget was $11.5 million. When you look at 2024, our budget increases to $13.2 million. So there is a kind of a summary of our 2024 proposed budget. And you'll see at the end of the year, we give monthly updates in our board meetings. So if you ever come to a board meeting, you'll see a similar chart to this that will outline month by month what we have spent based upon what we have budgeted. And there's certain percentage markers that we want to hit 1 month in, 3 months in, 5 months in, so on and so forth, till we get to the 12th month, and we shouldn't have spent more than 100% of what we appropriated or planned for that fiscal year. Okay, so this is a slide that I really wanted to get to. And as I promised, as a corporation promised, going forward when we talked about renewing that 2023 operating referendum to go from 2024 to 2032, is that going forward, we were going to be very upfront. We were going to disclose all finances to the districts, especially when it comes to the operating referendum, to show our local community, our taxpayers, what those funds are being used for. Want to be 100% upfront on why we need them and how they're being used. And so that's what we've done here. In the past, we haven't had as specific of a budget with the operating referendum. And so this year, Mrs. April Boone, who's our corporation treasurer, her and I sat down, we established this budget, and it's even more detailed when you see it on our system than this, but I wanted to put it into some categorical basis rather than specific line items for you to make it be a little bit more simplistic. So when looking at this, our first categorical item would be for 3 early kindergarten teachers, elementary art and elementary swim. That includes their salary, their PERF and TURF. PERF and TURF are their pension funds through the state that we have to contribute to, and their Social Security. We've budgeted for 2024 to spend $226,000 for those positions and those benefits. The next one would be for 2 ag teachers, our band instructor, our weights instructor, their salary, their turf benefits, and Social Security. We budgeted $262,000. We budgeted $5,000 for elementary supplies. We budgeted $25,000 of supplemental revenue for the athletics department, K through 12. That is managed by the high school principal and athletic director. We budgeted $25,000 for our performing arts department, again, K through 12. That is managed by our high school principal, elementary principal, and our arts department chairs. When we look at corporation supplies, we have budgeted for $15,000. Advertising and marketing, the pamphlets that we put out, the billboards that we put up to help increase our enrollment by pulling in out of district students, which again directly goes to positively impact our enrollment and increase the funding in the education fund. We need that advertising and marketing out there to draw in high quality students that we want here at Clinton Central to continue to grow the school and program. So we've budgeted $25,000 for advertising and marketing out of the referendum fund. And professional services, $75,000. That's for outside consultants that we may need to bring in, or any sort of professional service that we have to pay for from time to time that are not direct employees of the district. Another one is purchase of mobile or fixed equipment. That can go for copiers, fax machines, those sort of items that we have. That's kind of just a kind of round out that budget there. We have $16,461. So we have a planned budget for the operating referendum of $675,000. As you can see, the bulk majority of that budget is going towards staffing. Without this operating referendum, we wouldn't be able to maintain that staffing for long term. So again, we are very appreciative to our community that you all came out in an overwhelming majority. Again, I want to reiterate, 84% of our community went out and voted yes for the renewal of the 2023 operating referendum. So thank you again for that. I mean, we couldn't, as a district, we couldn't do it without you guys. So very appreciative of that overall. So there's our 2024 operating referendum budget from a categorical basis. Again, if you ever have questions about it, feel free to reach out and I'll go through it in more detail, or just answer questions that you may have. Okay, another big adjustment that we've made and why our cash balance has increased the last couple of years is, and really this last year, when you look at the 2023 fiscal report, gaining about 2.3 million. Here's a big reason why is in the fall of 2022, April Boone, again, a corporation treasurer, her and I sat down, we were looking at our cash balance. At the time, we had around a $4.5 million cash balance. And we're looking at the interest that we're getting. We weren't getting what we thought we should be getting. And so we dug into that. We worked with our banking institution on that and got some things realigned with our cash balance. And so we've been able to increase our interest earned on our cash balance, which again gives us additional revenue. So we made that switch in the fall of 2022 with how our cash balance was allocated within the bank. And our interest went from, I want to say in 2021, we were around, I don't know the exact number, but we were around between 10 and 20,000 of interest. Not a lot based upon a $4 million cash balance. We made a switch. We jumped up to almost 38,000 in just a few short months in 2022 by making that adjustment. In 2023, we have a cash balance, or we increased our interest earned went to 232,000. So we made 232,000 off of a $4 to $5 million cash balance throughout the 2023 year. I'm optimistic that 2024 will be even better based upon our cash balance is currently almost at 9 million. We have interest that we're earning off of our bond proceeds through the building project, which those bond proceeds are not listed within our cash balance. So that's a whole separate interest that we are earning. And overall, I anticipate that number to continue to go up. And when you look at 232,000, I look at that as 232,000 of free money for us to be able to use to supplement what's best for our students. Hiring additional staff, providing additional pay raises, those sorts of things, maintaining facilities and such. So kudos to Ms. Boone on digging into that and really helping us get that situated and increasing the interest earned over the last year and a half. So I talked about Mrs. Boone already, but again, I want to really reiterate, when it comes to the budget, Mrs. April Boone, she's our corporation treasurer. She does a phenomenal job in really managing corporation expenses, helping keep the district in an excellent state financially. She's been here almost 10 years now, and really has taken the district from where it was in 2014, 15, 16, and being in a tough financial spot in those years to where we are now, being in an extremely good financial spot as a district. And so kudos to her on that. She's been stable. She's been a constant here at the district, and hats off to her for everything she does with that. I couldn't do what I do without her and her role. And I can be able to be have some global oversight over the budget without having to dig in on it on a day in and day out basis. And so without her, this wouldn't be possible. So kudos to her. So if you ever see April out and about, thank her for all of her hard work that she's doing with our corporation dollars, local taxpayers' dollars, and being fiscally responsible with that. I want to thank everybody for their time. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time for further clarification, or if you really just have any questions at all. It doesn't have to be all about the budget. It can be about anything. I am busy from time to time, but I will get back to you if I don't answer right away. So there's my email, cell phone numbers there. Call either one. And I hope this was informational and positive overall for you as a community member, parent, student, local business owner, whatever the case may be. And thank you for taking the time to watch this. I know it's lengthy, but yeah, thank you overall. And hey, as always, guys, go Bulldogs.